950 years ago, the greatest Islamic scholar of all time discovered something that modern psychologists are only now beginning to understand. Ghazali identified what he called knowing pain in the soul, and his solution will change how you see your entire life. But this discovery didn't come easy. Ghazali had to abandon everything he thought mattered to find it. And what he found explains why you can have everything you've ever wanted and still feel like something essential is missing from your existence. You know this feeling. It's the emptiness that appears when the distractions fade away. The strange longing that no achievement seems to fill. The sense that despite all your success, despite all your relationships, despite all your possessions, there's still a void at the center of your being that nothing seems to touch. Modern psychology has given this experience many names: existential anxiety, the void, spiritual emptiness. But Ghazali, writing in the 11th century, understood something about this condition that we're only now rediscovering. He called it the knowing pain in the soul, a pain that comes not from what you lack, but from what you've forgotten you are. Ghazali wrote that every person is born with this knowing pain, this disconnection from ultimate reality. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's evidence that something is right with you. It's your soul recognizing that you are more than the physical form you inhabit, more than the personality you've constructed, more than the roles you play in the world. But here's what makes Ghazali's insight revolutionary. He didn't see this pain as a problem to be solved through external means. He saw it as a compass pointing toward your true nature. The emptiness you feel isn't asking to be filled with more stuff, more experiences, more achievements. It's asking to be recognized for what it actually is, the space where your authentic self meets ultimate reality. In his masterwork, The Revival of Religious Sciences, Ghazali explains that most people misunderstand this pain completely. They think it's telling them they need more of something. More money, more love, more recognition, more pleasure, more security, more novelty. So they spend their lives chasing external solutions to an internal recognition. But Ghazali had tested all these external solutions personally. He had achieved the highest academic position in the Islamic world. He had wealth, fame, respect, intellectual mastery. He had everything that society told him would bring fulfillment. And yet the pain remained. In fact, the more successful he became, the more acute the pain grew. This led him to a shocking realization. The knowing pain in the soul wasn't asking to be eliminated. It was asking to be understood. It wasn't a deficiency to be cured. It was a recognition to be honored. The emptiness wasn't empty at all. It was full of possibility, full of potential, full of the divine essence that had been obscured by layers of conditioning and distraction. Ghazali discovered that this pain exists because you are not just a physical being having random experiences in a meaningless universe. You are a spiritual being temporarily inhabiting a physical form, and your soul knows this even when your mind has forgotten. The pain is your soul's way of reminding you that your true home is not in the world of forms and achievements, but in the realm of pure being. This is why no external acquisition can ever fully satisfy this longing. You're trying to fill a spiritual void with material solutions. You're trying to satisfy divine hunger with earthly food. It's not that these things are bad or wrong. It's that they're not designed to address the actual need. They're like trying to quench thirst by looking at pictures of water. But understanding this changes everything. Once you recognize that the emptiness is not a problem but a teacher, once you see that the longing is not a deficiency but a guidance system, you stop trying to escape it and start learning from it. You stop running from the feeling and start moving toward what it's pointing to. Ghazali taught that this knowing pain in the soul is actually love in disguise. It's your deepest self calling you home to your true nature. It's the divine within. You're recognizing itself and yearning for conscious reunion. The mystics call this the lover seeking the beloved, but they're not two separate things. The lover and the beloved are one consciousness experiencing itself through the illusion of separation. This is why the solution to spiritual emptiness is not addition but recognition. You don't need to gain something you don't have. You need to remember something you've temporarily forgotten. You don't need to become something different. You need to recognize what you already are beneath all the layers of identity you've accumulated. Modern research in psychology supports Ghazali's insights in remarkable ways. Studies on happiness consistently show that external achievements and acquisitions provide only temporary satisfaction before people return to baseline levels of fulfillment. Researchers call this hedonic adaptation. No matter what you achieve or acquire, you eventually adapt to it and the longing returns. But research also shows that people who cultivate what psychologists call self-transcendent experiences, moments where they feel connected to something larger than their individual identity, report significantly higher levels of life satisfaction and meaning. These are exactly the experiences that Ghazali identified as the remedy for the knowing, pain in the soul. Neuroscience research has found that when people engage in contemplative practices that quiet the constant chatter of self-referential thinking, specific brain networks associated with a sense of separate self become less active. Meanwhile, networks associated with feelings of unity and connection become more active. The brain literally shifts from separation consciousness to unity. Consciousness. This is what Ghazali discovered through direct experience 950 years before modern science could measure it. He found that when the mind becomes still and the ego stops its constant commentary, something profound emerges. The sense of being a separate individual struggling in a hostile universe dissolves, and what remains is pure awareness aware of itself as the ground of all existence. But Ghazali didn't present this as an escape from the world. He saw it as a return to the world with transformed perception. Once you recognize your true nature, once you experience yourself as more than just your personality and circumstances, you can engage with life from a completely different foundation. You're no longer desperately seeking fulfillment from external sources because you've found the source of fulfillment within yourself. This doesn't mean you stop having preferences or goals or relationships. It means these things are no longer burdened with the impossible task of providing ultimate meaning and satisfaction. They can be enjoyed for what they are without being asked to be what they're not. You can pursue success without being enslaved by it. You can love people without trying to complete yourself through them. Ghazali called this state the heart at rest. It's not passive resignation or withdrawal from life. It's active engagement from a place of inner fullness rather than inner emptiness. When you're no longer driven by the frantic need to fill the void, you're free to respond to life rather than react to it. Your actions arise from wisdom rather than compulsion. The practical implications of this understanding are profound. Instead of trying to eliminate the feeling that something is missing, you can use it as a spiritual barometer. When the emptiness arises, instead of immediately reaching for distractions or acquisitions, you can pause and ask what it's pointing to. What have you forgotten about your true nature? What layers of false identity have accumulated that need to be seen through? Ghazali taught specific practices for this recognition, though he emphasized that the practices themselves are not the goal. The goal is the recognition that the practices point to. Meditation, contemplation, self-inquiry. These are tools for remembering what you already are, not methods for becoming something different. One of his most powerful teachings is about the different levels of the self. There's the ego self, the personality that thinks it's separate and needs to constantly defend and enhance itself. There's the soul self, which recognizes its connection to something greater. And there's the spirit self, which is pure awareness itself. beyond all individual characteristics. The knowing pain in the soul arises when these levels are out of alignment. When the ego is driving the bus, trying to find ultimate satisfaction. In temporary things, the soul suffers because it knows this is impossible. The pain is the soul's way of calling attention to this misalignment. But when you recognize yourself as awareness itself, beyond both ego and soul, the pain transforms into peace. Not because you've eliminated anything, but because you've seen. Through the illusion that was causing the suffering, you realize that you are the space in which all experiences arise and pass away, including the experience of emptiness and the experience of fullness. This recognition doesn't happen once, and then you're done. It's an ongoing process of remembering and forgetting, and remembering again. The knowing pain in the soul becomes a friend, a teacher, a guide back to your true nature. Whenever you've wandered into the illusion of separation, Ghazali's great gift to humanity was showing that what we typically see as a problem is actually a solution in disguise. The feeling that something is missing isn't evidence that you need to acquire something. It's evidence that you need to recognize something. The emptiness isn't asking to be filled. It's asking to be seen for what it actually is, the spaciousness of your true nature, temporarily obscured by the clouds of identification with form. Modern people often feel this emptiness more acutely than previous generations because we've become so skilled at distraction. We have endless entertainment, endless information, endless ways to avoid sitting still with ourselves. But underneath all the noise, the knowing pain in the soul persists, waiting patiently for us to stop running and start listening. The beautiful paradox that Ghazali discovered is that when you stop trying to escape the emptiness and start embracing it, when you stop seeing it as your enemy and start recognizing it as your teacher, it reveals itself to be not empty at all. It's full of the very presence you've been seeking everywhere else. This is why Ghazali called his journey from doubt to certainty, from emptiness to fulfillment, from separation to unity, the greatest adventure possible for a human being. Not because it takes you somewhere else, but because it brings you home to what you've always been, but temporarily forgotten. The feeling that something is missing will always return, as long as you're looking in the wrong direction for the solution. But once you understand what Ghazali understood, once you recognize that the pain is pointing not outward but inward, not toward acquisition, but toward recognition, everything changes. The very thing that seemed to be your greatest problem becomes your most valuable guide. This is the shocking discovery that transformed Ghazali's life, and that can transform yours. The knowing pain in the soul is not your enemy. It's your deepest wisdom, calling you home to yourself.